Okay, today I'm sitting here with Paul Fahrenheit, author, historian, warrior poet, and native son of Virginia, to discuss his most recent article, Americanis Canem. His work can be found on praxarchy.com and paulfahrenheit.substack.com. How you doing, Paul?
I'm good, Cinder. How are you, my man?
I am alive, and this piece that you've written makes me feel more alive. It is rife with nostalgia. It stirs an image for many of us, and that image is an American image. Whether we come from a pioneer family or a family that arrived in the cities and stayed put, in America we're all suckled at the teat of the conquering frontiersman imagery. The absolute freedom of our endless space is something we feel defines us. And I'd like to quote your article. Quotation: "The American possesses freedom that his forefathers in the old world did not. Even if our laws are stricter, even if our government is worse, even if our culture is more shallow, we will always possess this, because it's in our minds, nay, our souls shaped by the endless space, by our land." Close quote. What do you hope to evoke in your fellow Americans and invoke in our cousins inside the sphere, yet outside the tradition, with this article?
Well, it's a question I could probably spend 4 hours answering, but for the sake of brevity, I guess the primary thing is purpose and energy, right? And purpose and energy aren't just these like ephemeral, abstract, vague concepts. They are specific, but they're also a specific generality, if that makes sense, right? I bring up the idea of America and the American frontiersman and what America represents because, as Oswald Spengler argues, as Francis Parker Yockey argues, as many other thinkers who have analyzed the continent argue, it is the final conclusion of the West. It is, as they say, the last frontier, not counting space. So I want to just sort of bring about this general awareness to not just the New World, but the Old World once again. Something to the point where, like in the 19th century, you had cowboy dime novels being sold in Sweden, and fake Indian artifacts, Native American, I mean, being sold in England, like curio shops and all this stuff. So and I think I argued this further in the article, but just as the old world colonized the new world with its culture, the new world then came back and colonized the old world with its sort of own versions of that culture. And that is why I wrote this piece, because I think that there's been too much mental separation between the old and the new world as, two different things, when in reality they're all just one single continuity, and that being the West.
And we're seeing a bit in our sphere of old world nostalgia leaking back into our American culture.
Yeah, that's completely correct. But that's only because we forgot the old world nostalgia in the first place. The old world nostalgia was always there. If you look at the 1890s, the Gilded Age, you see all of these sort of great rich families that later became terrible. But you look at the Rockefellers, you look at the Morgans, you look at all of these other sort of families, and you see the estates they built. You see the college education curriculums in places like Harvard and Yale before they were completely and utterly destroyed, right? This was a old world recreation, and it was largely limited to the East Coast, but you can see it sort of transplanted in other places, most notably California. So I think that's coming back. That sort of old world nostalgia, that sort of desire for an age past is coming back, because it's not so much that we had the age past, but we had the nostalgia in an age past.
Yeah, we have forgotten a bit of that correct American nostalgia. And I'd like to quote from the piece. Quotation: "When the old man on the mountain stump faded away, the frontier of America faded with him, and the idea of America unraveled into its component parts. Its restless energy turned against itself to burn down its own foundations. Now that fire is well and truly in its dying embers, we're left to ask, what component parts are left? Globo homo is one of these parts, though a corrupted and debased form of it. It's the endless will of the Aryan conqueror who set forth to make the red men white. Turn to a different kind of taming for much more insidious purposes. It too is unraveling." Close quote. So, in your opinion, Is global homogenization an American invention?
I wouldn't say it's so much an American invention than it is an American interpretation of the anti culture, which is liberalism. Nor do I believe it was Americans that kind of brought it to that point and have been pushing it on the world. Although I can't say who I do think has been pushing it on the world because rules. But it is, even if you take all of that away, even if you take away the fact that America was hijacked, even if you take away the fact that liberalism, is a cancerous anti-culture, right? You cannot sort of take out this American interpretation of it, this sort of endless space, this sort of taming everything to make everything into this new civilization, into this safe, secure, homogenous place, like you saw with the Native American schools in the 19th century after the Indian Wars ended. All of these natives from these various tribes were taken to these white schools and basically forced to speak English and beat and all that. And I'm not moral judging on that. It's just that sort of mindset. The same thing was applied to freedmen, to African slaves after they had been freed, to all sorts of immigrants, especially after 1965. And this is sort of an American mindset. I guess you could say it's Anglo as well. This idea that you can make other people like you, right? But the problem is it's not so much American anymore because there's no American culture that Global Homo is turning things into. It's turning things into what I call Gollum culture, or just this artificial mass, this blurring, this rootless, stateless place. And that's why I don't believe it's as much an American thing anymore. Maybe it got started that way, but it hasn't been that way for some time.
Well, it certainly is hard to bring frontier culture to a place like India that's, been around for tens of thousands of years.
Yeah, and on that, it's not so much the fact that the place is well established, because the Red Men have histories going back tens of thousands, if not longer. And there's also some like alternative history theories that I won't mention here.
That's a topic for a different podcast.
Yes, exactly. But it's more of the fact that you had the right group of people with the right sort of desires and mental images in the right place. And that is what America was. Manifest destiny is just sort of the words that they put on it as time went on, but it was always their desire to go forth, to conquer, to claim open space, to do all these things. And I mean, it's not so much frontier culture that's being brought places anymore. It's anti-culture. It's corporate PR. It's this sort of safe, sanitized, so general it applies to no one, um, type thing that is being pushed with the methods that the old Americans used to bring this old frontier culture to places.
So, do you think that there is a positive image for a global American empire?
Yes, you can find it in Yaki's Imperium. The positive image for a global American empire is a genuine global American empire. We call it the global American empire because it is like what is it? Like Voltaire said, it is neither global American or an empire. Um, but if there was if I talk about Caesar quite a bit, or at least the concept of Caesar. If Caesar were to come tomorrow, unify the entirety of America, and then go forth to conquer all of Europe and place them under his de jure rule instead of just this all credit based de facto rule, right? That's why people hate the gay so much, is because it does not rule like a ruler would rule. It rules like a merchant would rule, through slavery. So if America actually just decided to take upon the responsibility of itself to take care of its old world counterparts, to govern it as a constituent part of the Imperium of the West, or whatever you would end up calling it, right? That is the positive image, I think, for a global America, if there even is to be a global America.
But certainly not under the current paradigm, is what you're saying.
No, not at all, because the current paradigm is no more American than it is European, than it is anything else.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are falling out of love with America and the West, and this leads me to the next quotation. Europe is little more than an open air nursing home, kept in a cozy womb of protection by its prodigal American sons who care for their fathers out of love and duty. Others look to a future without the West, to China and the Orient implementing a global system of filial piety sans homogenization, to Russia and Slavdom for a new global Christian church. They foolishly think that these two things are the same as their American counterparts, and that the world would be better by their dominance. Close quote. So, what is wrong with China and Slavdom if they're doing things right?
So I'm first going to comment upon the two things they're doing right, and then I will talk about the Orient and then Slavdom, respectively. So, what they're doing right is an enemy of our enemy situation. They oppose global homo at its foundations. They oppose global homo for reasons that we can understand and we can support. And they're the only ones opposing global homo with any sort of significant power that makes them capable of doing so. That is what they're doing right. And that is why many people, especially people in these spheres, are looking at the two places as sort of the future, the thing that the quote West unquote should adopt in order to survive. They do not have a long form view. They don't really consider, I'm talking about the people in our spheres, they don't really consider the fact that each individual civilization, each individual culture is entirely internally different, and that something that China is using to oppose global homo will not work in the West in the ways that they think it will, and the negative aspects of it will overwhelm. To speak to the Orient in particular, Bronze Age Pervert says that Chinamen will leave their dead in the streets, and not even crows do that. I have witnessed this. This is not dead people in the street, but this Oriental attitude. It is very much a true thing. They are I think it's trite to quote Star Trek, but they are the Borg, basically. They are this beehive. They are this sort of profanation, this caricature of order, this work for work's sake, with everyone having this role that is completely non-negotiable and is harsh and non-allowing for any sort of individuality, right? I am all for everyone playing the role that they're generally pointed to, but the occidental man, the Western man, the white man, whatever you call him, has an entirely different conception of reality. He has a metaphysical need for freedom, for individuality, that the Oriental man does not. And that is why I think our overlords are actually trying to impose these sort of Oriental conditions on us. What is live in the pod, eat the bug, take the drugs, watch the Netflix? What is that other than an Oriental way of organizing society? Moving on to Slavdom. Slavdom is closer to us than the Orient, but they are still a civilizational enemy. They're a civilizational enemy in the fact that they too have a completely different conception of life. The Slavs may share some blood, but they are different. They are fatalistic. They are pessimistic. They are generally suspicious. They are self-concerned. They are untrustworthy. They will admit as such, right? They have yet to define themselves. They are, I think, the next high culture. And I think maybe if you were talking to me like 1,000 or so years from now, I could say different things about them. But as of right now, they are just component parts. They're like the civilizational equivalent of a newborn baby. And that is why I don't think they're the near future for the West. They are the long-term future, long after all of us will have passed from this earth. But I have several friends, and I don't want to speak to anyone's faith or the sincerity of their faith. I have several friends who've converted to the Eastern Orthodox Church. I have no problem with this, as their faith is genuine and they found a genuine way of expressing it. At the same time, there was an individual in a group chat I was in, a voice chat, who once said that the Eastern Orthodox Church is a museum for the Slavic ethnicity. And that makes sense to me. It really is not this sort of way of Christian being that existed in the past in the Catholic Church and even the Protestant churches and before that. It was really, it's just it's like how I felt going to my old Episcopal church on Sunday. It felt like something everyone did
to keep up appearances and keep up a culture. The difference is that the Slavs have a bit more racial self-awareness. So that is what's the long answer to a short question, but that's what I think is wrong with both Slavdom and the Orient.
So, in bringing it back to the global American empire and the growing narrative that they're sort of propagating, why do you think that narrative is positioned so completely against European and American men, specifically white men?
Oh, well, this is a very easy answer. It's because they're the only ones who actually do things. They're literally the only demographic of people, I think, in the entirety of human history who has gone out and built things, built civilizations, good civilizations too, not just like caricatures of them. They've built great cathedrals to their faiths. They have built great castles for their rulers and their warriors. They've built great monuments to armies that were sacrificed. Right? They've written great works to dedicate entire ages to. These are the people that will tear down the system, or at least change it enough so that it makes a semblance of sanity again. And because the system is actually entirely built around creating conditions that are as negative as possible for the people not within the club of the elites, they need to keep down the conscientious, the loyal, the noble people who are the ones who will go out and stop what they're doing, because what they're doing is fundamentally evil, because it is based on greed, it is based on envy, and it is based on all of these things, because they know that these people they are pushing, that they are targeting this narrative against, are the only ones with agency, and all they are sniveling mutants who have nothing going for them other than the fact that they sit next to the levers of power.
Yeah, the note that I just made as you were talking was the agency of Occidental man is the greatest threat.
Very much.
So the agency of Occidental man applied nowadays in contemporary culture. Quotation. This leaves us with the last component part of America, the only part with any sort of agency left to it. The last frontiersman, the road warrior who stalks the highways and interstates in ever decreasing numbers. The Mad Max like worshippers of their engines who stand sole vigil against the encroaching tide of a petroleum genocide. Close quote. So, where, Paul, is the new frontier for us?
Well, several places. There's always a frontier, even though there's no more land to have. There's still a whole lot of terra incognita. I always walk up to people and they say, "Oh, I've been to all these places. I've been to all these states." And then I say, if for example, they say, "Oh, I've been to Chicago," and then I say, "Okay, but have you been to Cairo?" And they're like, "What is Cairo?" And I say to them, "Cairo is a city on the southern tip of Illinois, right at where the Ohio and Mississippi rivers cross." And they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, then you've never really been to Illinois, have you?" There's still quite a bit. There's almost all of America is terra incognita to most of us who find ourselves in these spheres being, quite frankly, rootless suburban cosmopolitans. And the new frontier is to be found in these local places, in these local histories, but not just that. It is to be found in the sort of cracks and crevices of this global homogenized system. I bring up the highways and the interstates there. That's because the highways and the interstates, if you look at all of them, they really are this sort of homogenized. They're like the veins, the arteries of global homo, right? And you can see the cancer spreading around in this one town that the interstate went through, and it's turned entirely into a bunch of gas stations and fast food restaurants and cheap hotels, right? But then you realize that in all of these places, as BAP says, there are portals. There are places, there are dive bars that bikers hang out. There are, drug dens, for lack of a better word. And I'm not condoning it, but like all of these things, all of these places live in the cracks of this globalist system. And if you are a strong man, if you're a man who's not afraid of fighting, and a man who's, even stronger, who's not afraid of making friends, then these places can be of great benefit to you and can serve as a frontier for you to discover. Another frontier that's a bit more ephemeral, that's a bit more internal, is fixing everything that's been done by this globalist system.
by setting everything back to what it's supposed to be, by encouraging local customs to start developing again. And this is a much more long-term goal, but this can be done both from the top down and from the bottom up, right?
Yes.
You could move to some southern town, go to the county museum and get like lots of places have this. I've noticed this. If you go to like this random county in just this random southern state, it will have a county museum, and you'll go there and someone has written a book on the county. And you can buy the book and read the book on the county and then kind of do your own research, and then just start to if you live there or you visit there a lot, just start to encourage people to start adopting these local customs that they once had again, to start celebrating their local history, right? You can only be in one place at once. You can only ever really know 200 people at once. That's why this whole idea of the mass man, this idea of the people, of all this stuff, is really just one big lie, because they only exist as, concepts. You never actually meet the people. Even if you're like in a giving a speech in front of a crowd of, let's say, 20,000, you don't know those people, right? You just know that they're there and you are there to speak to them. But in reality, your brain can only ever really know 200 people. And that's at like know them, like know their names and know a little bit about them. And even then you start to, and some people they can know a little bit more, and a lot of people they can only know, around 100 or something like that. But that's about the size that a town or a village generally used to be, right? 100 to 200 people. And that was a pretty decently sized one. And really, that's all you need to know, because you can, within like a group of 100 or 200, not only are you biologically sort of indefinite, you have enough genetic diversity in that group of 200 people to keep going for a very long time without needing to find outsiders. That no one's saying that outsiders won't come, right? But also you can fulfill all of the needs required to sustain life with 100, 200 people. All of the specialized needs, all of the cultivation needs and all that. And I'm not saying go around and form trad towns, but this is just the example I'm using. It's the frontier is to be found in realizing that actually you don't know anything. And once you realize that you don't know anything, that you know nothing, everything becomes equally as possible.
Yes, what's the term you use? Terra incognita?
Terra incognita, yes.
Yes, so hidden land. It's a very interesting concept, and it is something that I have done, which I encourage everyone who possesses that agency and that desire to do, because it is possible. And this leads us to our next quotation. The American still possesses two tools that prolong and facilitate his freedom: his rifle and his engine. The American may get in his Ford F-150 and drive from California to New York tomorrow. Gas will cost him, sure, but he can do it. The highways will lead him through the nodes of every center of American culture, of declining American civilization, where he'll meet fellow travelers with the same goals and ambitions. He could vanish into the woods where no one would find him because no one cares to look for him. He could form a gang of friends, terrorizing dive bars and county mounties from Miami to Monterey. He has energy. He has space. He has freedom. Even if the frontier faded away in the Sierra Nevadas, the frontier never faded away in the heart of the American man, the higher American man, who sees in himself a cowboy, a planter, a knight, a scholar, a poet, a drifter, and a man with a soul that's been saved. If the West, too, is to be saved, it will be saved in America by the American man. Everywhere else is exhausted. Close quote. So, Paul, what is your advice for young American men?
Advice you will find better said in other places, but it's the exact same. Start getting physically fit. I'm not saying you have to go and like be able to do a 300-pound bench or something like that, but be able to lift probably your own body weight is the general litmus test. And if you don't want to lift your own body weight, then just start fasting and cut weight. Learn what you put into your body. Learn what kind of foods you eat. And learn how the effects that they have on you and what effects you want them to have on you. Make friends, Be very friendly with people, be very generous, invite them over often, accept invitations often. Know where you come from, know what you are, know what your heritage is. This isn't your identity, which, Bap has done a very good job of attacking in his latest show. Identity is a faggoty word. It's a choice. It's not a choice what you are. You're born what you are. So learn what you are, right? Learn what your goals are, learn your own mind. Find a way to provide for yourself materially that doesn't make you hate yourself. And if that means you have to work in an office job, and as long as you can live with yourself at the end of the day, work in that office job. But never become complacent. Don't just let yourself slip into this system. Even if you have a wife and if you have kids and you have a life that you're settled down to, right? Find a way to start transitioning that life that you have outside of this system into a more sort of self-sustaining mode, right? Read, I guess. I mean, reading is kind of overrated. I know it's something a writer shouldn't really be saying to his audience, but read my stuff if you're going to read anything. But reading is actually important. You just need to be very discerning in what you read, right? If you're reading 1 to 2 books a year, but you're reading them really closely and you're taking in what they're saying, you will know more than people who have read, let's say, 20 books in a year that, but they don't like pay close attention, or they don't like sit there and like dedicate their mind to learning it. Finally, I guess, figure out a metaphysics for yourself. If you're Christian, try to be the best Christian. If you're pagan, try to be the best pagan. If you're, weird like me, try to figure out why you're weird and why you need to have these weird beliefs and not follow a single faith tradition. And don't worry about women so much. I mean, some who know me might call that hypocritical, but it really, they're not important, right? There are endless numbers of them. If you find a really good one that that fits a bunch of criteria that you have, okay, fine, act on that. As long as you think that you won't get better than that, then sure. But otherwise, just focus on building yourself. Focus on making yourself into something. Focus on making yourself into a weapon. Actually, that's one thing I just remembered. Weapons training and combat training of some sort, whether it be boxing, Muay Thai, Krav Maga, something to that effect. Learn how to use firearms with iron sights. If you like optics, use optics. But iron sights never run out of batteries. And go on camping trips. Starve yourself. See what it feels like to go without food. Just all little ideas. I could probably keep rambling on, but I think that's all I've got on that particular question.
Well, that's excellent advice. As you said, it's in many places, but it never hurts to reiterate. So, what does the future hold for our Paul Fahrenheidt?
Well, a number of things. I'm working on what I've started calling the American Eddas. I'm working on those. I'm working on my sort of great epic. I'm hoping to get those published. It's funny. It's the naivete of a young writer always makes him think he can get more done in a shorter period than he actually can. And I was shooting to have those done by May, June, but honestly, I would be amazed if I get them done within a year. But as soon as I get those done, they might be being published on some friendly publishers of ours. In addition, come May, June timeframe, around there, I will begin producing monetized content, both in terms of articles, and I have a podcast planned with several notable guests. I'm also very frequently a guest on my friends' podcasts, The Prudentialists, He is the Eunuch, to name a few. And I am on Twitter making people somewhat angry, including our friends. And that's all I really have to say. I mean, I'm sure other things will come up and I'll announce them, but that's what the future holds.
Well, yeah. And once again, everyone, you can find Paul's work at praxarchy.com and paulfahrenheit.substack.com. Thank you so much for joining me, Paul.
Thank you, Cinder.
Well, thank you for the time, everybody who's watching, and please join ironagearchive.com. Check out the links in the show notes. That's where you can find Paul and us and everything else you ever wanted to know. See you guys later.